Okay, so we're going to be talking about Novak Djokovic. I understand that he is the bringer of pestilence. He is the spawn of Papa Nurgle. He is the rider of the apocalypse, bringing the plague, yes. But luckily, the Australian government, ever so vigilant, ever so keen on keeping people safe, they have managed to punish him and send him back home, and thus averted the crisis. The pestilence was averted. But you probably haven't heard about the fact that Andrei Rublev, another tennis player, Australia let me enter country while I was still positive for the virus. Oh, noni desu ka? Oh, what is happening here? Oh, is the Australian government going to be held accountable? They failed in their duty to keep people safe. Oh. Okay, let me tell you what's actually happening, all right? Let me explain to you a couple of things. So, the question is, why did they go after Novak, but didn't they go after the other guy? So, there are many explanations, which people love to call conspiracy theory, because hypothesis, or imagining why something could possibly be, is a conspiracy theory. In other words, look, it doesn't make sense. Why did they allow one guy, but they didn't allow the other? And there's many explanations. One such explanation has to do with the Rio Tinto lithium mine. So the Rio Tinto lithium mine is a project that Australia and Serbia is having. So Serbia has lithium in its borders, and Australia wants to mine it. However, there have been many environmentalists within the Serbian border who do not appreciate this, right? They don't want it to be mined because they say, well, if you mine it, you can damage the water, you can damage the land. It really doesn't make sense because you have these environmentalists who are like, okay, we need to go solar, but in order to go solar, you need lithium, but you can't mine the lithium. I mean, you can mine it, but just not where they live, mine it somewhere else where other people live, right? So it doesn't really make sense. Which is why probably I would not be surprised, okay, this is legitimately a conspiracy theory. I would go Pikachu face if China isn't diverting some funds, some yens, into these activists who are protesting the lithium mines. Because China wants you to buy lithium from them, and they also don't want Australia to have a lot of money because the relations between Australia and China are a little bit tense. So I would say that this is the prime suspect. To me, right? Because it doesn't make sense with the activists. It's like, okay, you're an environmental activist. Great. I understand that. But where do you want people to make the solar batteries from? If they can't mine the lithium under your town, where are they supposed to do it? Right? So it doesn't really make sense why people are protesting. All right, whatever. Fine. Believe what you want. But what's interesting is that this Novak Djokovic supported these environmentalists last year. So last year, before going to Australia, he actually said, oh yes, this lithium mine permit, yeah, it's not okay, it shouldn't happen, blah, 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 the water, the nature. And it's possible that Australia didn't really appreciate what he said. And now they found a good opportunity, let's embarrass him, let's ruin his career, we'll show him what's what. Now, the problem, of course, has to be with the fact that here in Eastern Europe, especially famous athletes like the Novak fellow and many other, they have a cult of personality. So when you pick on them, it's like picking on Jesus. It's kind of difficult to correlate with Americans just how big the cult of personality is. But I suppose it's kind of like if Kaepernick from the US would have been invited by Australia to participate there, and he goes, and then the Australian government kicks him out, and he manages to sue the government. And in the meantime, he is being detained and he wins the suit, but then the government kicks him out anyway. It's kind of like that is the embarrassment, right? The process was the embarrassing thing. So if that would happen, you'd see a lot of left-leaning progressive people from the US all of a sudden protesting and being upset. It's like, why are you doing this to Kaepernick, right? It's kind of like that. But here in Eastern Europe, it's like that, but on steroids. So before, you had a couple of environmentalists that were protesting. Now you have look at the picture. Look how many, and they're not even social distancing. At least they're wearing masks, right? So they do follow the science. But look how many people. And by the way, take into account that this is in January. when the temperature outside is -5, -10 degrees. To get this many people in January, it's ridiculous. So when BBC says, oh no, like this has nothing to do with Novak Djokovic, it's like, yes and no, right? The protests existed before, but they were very small in scale, and now the protests are massive. And it is due to the way the Serbians view that the Australian government has mistreated their favorite tennis player. It is purely that. Like, I'm willing to bet you go to this crowd of people and you will ask a couple of them and you'll see many of them don't give a single fuck about the environment, but they're just there in order to mess with Australia. And I do think that, Australia is probably going to sue, and they're probably going to win the lawsuit because the Serbian government revoked the lithium mine permit. And it would be very interesting if the government, after Australia wins the lawsuit, they revoke the permit anyway for different reasons. Because that's what Australia did to the Serbian fellow, right? Like, first he wins the lawsuit, and then it's like, oh, shoo, go away. You have germs. Okay, fine. Like, maybe Serbia can tell the Australians, it's like, look, our country is not safe. We cannot, in good consciousness, allow Australian workers to come here and get sick. I mean, look, we understand. It's just like we're doing things a little bit differently. We cannot guarantee the Australian company workers their safety, so they need to be kept in Australia where their government keeps them safe, because here we just cannot. So that is the controversy, right? Because you now see a lot of mainstream media who are like, oh, well, this had nothing to do with Djokovic. It's like, well, he's like the catalyst. Put it like that. The reaction happens, but it happens very slowly. But with Djokovic, it happens instantly. He catalyzed it. And take into account, this is right before Serbian elections. And when you have an event, like when you have so many people on the street before an election, especially when it's something that in Serbia, this is not polarizing. I like the idea of revoking the lithium mine permit is not polarizing. Like, you have people on the left and on the right that, like, they agree. Especially when it's like the mistreatment of Djokovic. Like, this is definitely not a polarizing thing. Like, both parties genuinely agree that this is messed up. And all parties, because they have a multi-party system. But yeah, so when you look at this and you are in charge, like you're the prime minister or, you're the party in charge, and you're looking out the window and you see so many people, you're like, oh shit. Like, maybe let's not give the permit to Australia. Maybe we can give it to someone else. Give it to China. Oh, I bet, like, I'm willing to bet this would be very interesting if they give the permit to China to see how many environmental activists are still on the street. I would be very, very interested, because then you can debunk me. Then you can be like, V, you are wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think if they give the permit to China, I think not a single person would comment about the environment. In fact, you would have environmentalists promoting and encouraging the collaboration. It's like, oh yes, it's so great, because now we can make car batteries and we can lower pollution, and it's so good. So awesome, so amazing. Under the CCP, magic happens. But anyway, right, so this is the controversy. Hopefully you guys understood it, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.